Record to this computer. Okay, you're on.
Hello. Today, during our fourth and final video, we're going to discuss the police investigation. We're going to talk about the actual dump site that the body was buried in some odd 50 years ago. And finally, we're going to play the actual recording of a visit to speak with the accomplice, Craig Holbrook. And we'll play that at the end. But before that, we want to get into how this investigation opened up, what led to it, and what was the first steps you took to accomplish this?
After I really researched and got the hospital record, I found Lynn, and it seemed that Madeline Babcock was the woman who went disappearing and matched it. So I hired my own PI. And when I hired my PI, he said, "Jody, I think you've solved this case." He was a 30-year homicide vet, and he was an officer in California. And he said, "You've got to take this to the police. You have enough." So he was the one that actually called the Vancouver Police Department and had the first meeting with them and actually got us a case with the Major Crimes Unit in Vancouver.
And this was in 2008?
It was in 2008. And then in 2009 was, you can see this is the very first time I got a response from the Vancouver Police Department. It's an incredibly slow process for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely not like the movies.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So at this point, you get a response. How are you feeling? How are you coping during this time? And what are your kind of thoughts and feelings around? Up until this point, you had handled everything yourself almost.
I had. And so I guess I believed that the police were going to take care of it. I mean, when I met that Chris Peterson, and he said, "I've worked homicide for 30 years. This is, you've solved it." I guess I just sat still and really believed that they were going to come and fix this.
So you had a lot of faith and trust.
I did have a lot of faith and trust in them for sure.
Okay. So tell us about the response that you get.
This was when Chris, after he met and had lunch with Detective Zapata, and it was very nice to hear that he found me credible and that he was interested in the case, and we were going to go forward as a missing person case, not a homicide. And so that was, of course, fantastic news for me. This email is actually I sent to Chris because one of the things that we talked about was my PI going and interviewing Craig. And again, like I say here, he's prepared to take a polygraph, and it seemed like we were playing right into Craig's hand because I know how my father works. I just knew how these guys work, and I knew that it would be harder for Craig to meet me face to face. It's harder to lie to. It's much easier to lie to a machine and just say yes or no. So, and this becomes important because later in, as we get down, we'll see, I have to go see Craig because we end up never seeing him, because my father dies in the middle of this investigation. So you see that in 12/08/2010, which is really only about a year after the Vancouver Police Department gets involved, my father dies. Craig was the accomplice. My dad was the one who slit her wrist or slit her throat. And so I just think at that time, not only did it wane, but they were looking for ways then to just get out of this because the actual murderer had passed away.
So did you contact the detective or anyone else leading up to this conversation with your father? Did you notify them that you'd be speaking with him?
I did. Actually, I sent, my dad died on the Wednesday, which was December 8th. And so on the 11th, I do get a hold of Detective Zapata, and I send him, when I left my dad, I came home and just wrote down everything me and my father had talked about, just for my own peace of mind and my own heart. My father did apologize for the murder. And so I just wanted him to have a complete, accurate account as much as possible. So I did come home that night after meeting with my dad and wrote everything down, and I have excerpts of that.
Okay, so you didn't record the conversation because, as you said, you were more you were there for your own sort of reckoning. Soul
Right.
to soul with your
Actually,
father.
Chris Peterson called me the next morning and asked me to put a wire on and go back and talk to my father. My father never actually was coherent after that time. And the truth was, I told him I just couldn't do it. It was so emotional for me. I just don't think my father and I would have ever had the conversation that we had if I would have been there in some kind of deceptive way. It's just not who I am because my parents were so deceitful. I don't know. I just couldn't put
Absolutely.
on a wire. And maybe it's the complications around betraying him. I don't know,
Right.
but I just couldn't do it.
So, what were some of the things you two discussed during
Well,
that 6 hour conversation?
we talked for a long time and we talked about all kinds of things. It was really cool in the beginning. He was actually he was frustrated with me. He wanted to say I was my sister. He was just kind of cruel. And he looked at me at one point and said, "What is it that you want from me?" And I just told him that I was there offering unconditional love, really, and that I was concerned for his soul because I'd been in the rooms with him and watched what he'd done. It was odd. He'd say really strange things to me. My father and I were very estranged through my life. And so we really just didn't get to have a lot of talk. One of the things that we did talk about, though, was that I was going to do my best to make this murdered woman who was laying down in his field all of these years, I was going to bring her up and make it right. And so that was much of what we talked about. It was a really 6 hours is a really long time, particularly when you've been estranged with somebody and you are going in knowing that you'll never see them again. So it was an incredibly, I think it was hard for both my father and I both. It was really strange. And as I sat there, I could just feel that I looked at him and I said, as fucked up as this is, you did this because you felt like you were protecting us and you couldn't let her leave that room because she was going to tell. And my dad would just look over at me. It was very odd, these hard exchanges that we'd had. And it was actually so tough that there was a time when I looked at him and said, "Would you like me to leave?" And he said that he wanted my company. So these were just really hard hours. But they changed my life in some ways, actually having that conversation with him.
Yeah, it sounds like some heavy revelations and reckonings were taking place in that room.
Exactly. In fact, at one point, I told him when we left that room, I felt really guilty. And he looked over at me and I could tell that he didn't know that I had felt guilt about that, probably because, I was just a couple months shy of 4 years. And that was when he looked ahead and said, "I'm sorry." And he sat back on the couch. I'll never forget that. It was the first time my father ever apologized for anything. It's actually the only time he's ever apologized for anything. And he just said it again, "I'm so sorry." So, he
Wow.
went to wherever he was going within 12 hours. And so clearly this man was looking back at his life as well. So I'm sure that "I'm so sorry" was a lot more for him than me, but it certainly felt good to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
I thought it was interesting as time went on in our conversation. You could see that he was a man that was dying and struggling to hang on to life, but his mind was still lucid enough he would say to me, "We shouldn't be talking about this stuff." And I would plead with him to just please let us continue to talk. And we did talk for 6 hours. And in that, we got a lot. At the very end of the night, I said to him, "Dad, I think Craig might be going to jail." And he looked at me and just said, so matter of fact, he said, "For what? Child molestation?" Because basically him and my mom and Craig let a child porn ring in our house for years and years and years. So it was quite shocking to hear my father be so honest. And maybe that's just those deathbed confession things. I have no idea, but I'd never experienced it before. So it was pretty wild to hear my father be so real.
I can imagine.
After that meeting, I did call well, actually, I sent that email and then Zapata reached out to me and had me come into the Vancouver Police Department. and he and Sergeant Krager came in and interviewed me. And when they came in, it feels so weird. It feels like I had done something wrong. And I was really hoping to have like this smoking gun confession that I could tell them. And I just really stopped and prayed before I started talking, just silently to myself, that I could be as honest as possible about it, because really that's all he said was, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry for my guilt." And Krager put down his pencil actually and said, "You can ask Zapata, but that's a true confession, because men like this confess to the easiest thing." So I was much relieved because I really wanted some really grand thing to say, but that's all I had. And in the end, they said that was how these men confess. So I don't know. I guess they're all cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, no kidding. So you have they have this conversation with you. They take down all of what they need, and then what do they instruct you with next?
Well, pretty much. They don't instruct me on anything. And I can tell that, it was just a really, it was a good meeting in that they just kind of validated that, the way my experience went was the true way. That was the best thing that my father could apologize for, I guess, or whatever. But I could
Right.
tell that there were no plans to go forward. The message I really got was pretty much they were going to be done. That dad
Oh,
was dead, and that was going to be
right.
the end of it.
And so, how long did it take before you started thinking of some ways that you might take matters into your own hands and start getting answers again and get the ball rolling?
Honestly, I bet I got a little desperate in the sense of I knew they were going to give up, and
Mhm.
we hadn't really been going at it very long. But now that dad had passed away, I felt like, um, one of the things that Zapata said to me, or Krager, I can't remember, is that they really needed a confession or a body, or they couldn't do anything. And so
Right.
I am full of tenacity. And I guess I decided that I was going to excavate the dump site. And so we tried. And I sent Zapata an email, and I told him that I was getting ready to go up and excavate this site.
So it was 2011 when you started sort of creating the plans to do this.
Right.
And
So it wasn't that long after my father's death. Right.
can you summarize a little bit about what you sent to him?
Um, yeah, pretty much just that we were going to go up and try to find something, try to find the body. And of course, we don't know what we're doing. And she was a small lady, this lady who was in the room with us.
Hmm.
And so I knew that, after 50 years, if she's down farther, the bones might last longer. But of course, we wrapped her in this bedspread that was that kind of 60s bizarre bedspread. So I imagine all of that's going to be intact somewhere, I'm hoping, because her purse has got to be in there, like all of this stuff, her shoes, like we should be able to find something. And so that's kind of my hope. And Zapata writes back to me almost immediately. It was as quick as I heard from him. And he told me that he had an idea, but that he was in training next week. He did call me, and his idea was that he would ask a local college archaeology class to help us if we actually discovered the body. So when we went up to dig, Zapata was, basically on kind of speed dial waiting to see if we found
Right.
anything.
Okay. Okay. So you did go into this with his blessing.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So what was the first step? Who did you contact about the actual excavation? Because, you
Right. Well, I had to get a hold of my mom, of course, because it's down. My parents built a house, and then down in their field is where the dump was. But my sister, then right behind the dump, built her house. And so my sister was actually abroad at the time, and she has never been supportive of any kind of truth seeking in my family. She actually helps kind of squash it. So I knew that she was in Europe, and that if I moved quickly, that my mom would let me, because she kind of owed it to me, and she did. It was a terrible, terrible day, but we went up there, and we ultimately brought, this is the actual dump site that's in the bottom of my parents' field. This is where the body still remains to this day. And these aren't very good
right.
pictures.
Uh-huh.
Go ahead.
Does the site look like it did in the year that she was buried here? Or has it changed some? Is there more foliage, more
Oh
trees?
yeah, well, there's a lot more foliage and trees for sure. But there was always, you know, like in this area, we always had a lot of brush. But of course, that was a big kind of sinkhole. And
Right.
it took Dad about 20 years to actually fill that up enough where you see that excavator coming down into that now. That probably goes, you know, I bet that sinkhole was probably 30 or 40 feet when we started. And so we had a pretty big, it's easy because it has landfill that a lot of the stuff has disintegrated. It was an easy enough dig for this man. But of course, you're supposed to be careful because, you know, what if we got to the body and we just threw it to the side? My mother told us that the first thing that went into this dump was a um, ice chest, like a big freezer chest. And so she said, if you find the freezer chest, then look underneath that. The body will probably be underneath that. But my mother lies about so much. I don't know if that's the truth or not, but we were
Right.
looking
But
for,
initially you were using that as sort of
we
the
were
land.
using exactly. And you can
Okay.
see now that the excavator's gone down in here. This is an interesting fact. When we actually called this man up, I showed him the hole. I told him that I just wanted him to dig. He stopped and he looked at me and he said, "Are we digging for a body?" And I was really taken aback. And I just said, usually what I always say. And I said, "We are digging for a body. Are you okay with that?" And he said, "I'm okay with that," which was pretty bizarre. So we
Yeah.
started, you can see that when we started, it was pretty light out and we dug actually until the evening, but we didn't get very far. You can see how actually the terrain is through the years. These trees, those of course wouldn't have been there in those early years, and they'd fallen over the dump. And so he's moving that all out so that we can actually get down to, you know, the territory where this would have been.
And are you encountering trash along the way?
We are, you know, and these pictures are not very good, but you can see in this picture that there's just trash everywhere. I mean, my father didn't have dump service for 25 or 30 years. He just, the entire, all the rubbish from the house went into this for years and years. And those blue, you can see those blue cans and beer bottles, those were
Hmm.
everywhere. My father drank Pepsi and beer for years and years. And
And were you able to identify certain
we,
years by the look or sort
yeah,
of
it
the
was actually
capacity of the
fascinating when we
object?
first, you could tell the decades because of the Pepsi cans and the beer
Wow.
bottles. And we actually just started getting down into the oldest beer bottles when we were up against the wall where my sister's road was. And for us to continue, we would have had to go underneath her road and take that out. And so um, we decided we just couldn't do that. I didn't have the money. Obviously, all of this stuff is expensive to get into. I was
Mhm.
single at the time and barely had enough money to do any of this, but I just wanted to do everything that I could. And
Right.
here's just another picture where you can see that. But we had to stop then. It was getting dark, and we were right up against my sister's road right when we started getting into the deepest part of the dump, which is where the body would have been. My father and sister put a road right over the top. Now this road is a hillbilly road. This isn't a road that's paved or anything. They've just shoved a bunch of stuff in there and then put gravel over it, but nonetheless it's the only way to get to her house, and I couldn't take that out.
Without her permission.
Well, without her permission. And just, it just was, I mean, now looking back, should I have just kept going? Maybe, you know, I just have tried to be respectful around it. And
Right.
it was pretty exhausting being there anyway for the day. And it's hard. Did I really want to be the one to find the body? Probably not, but I tried. So when we had to give up, I guess for that day, I was ready to give up because it is
Right.
quite, I was terrified with each dig. I mean, we dug for hours and it was terrifying thinking that we might actually find, you know, her remains. That would be better if somebody else could have been there doing it, but nobody ever
Right.
fucking helped. So I was doing what I could.
Right. So, over the years, did you consider going back? Did you attempt
No,
to contact any family members or think?
no, you know, I haven't because my sister came back from Europe and she has always just really been against anything. She's retaliated to just keep me quiet for years. And so once she returned and came back to her house, the whole thing was just over. And you can
Right.
only do so much. You know what I mean? Like I'd have
Right.
to, she's never going to say, sure, take my road out. Or if I had, you know, $20,000 to do it right, maybe, but I
Right.
just didn't.
Okay. So after this point, what's your next move?
I go down, the Vancouver Police Department closes the case. So I go down and get the case file. I was really upset. I got a call from them and he tells me we're just gonna close the case. And so I went down to the records, and this is all that was left of all of those years. You can see that this report was printed in 2013. So again, now this is a couple years later, and just always trying to figure out something to do. So I just thought it was interesting. We can just go through these quickly. He basically does a summation of some from 2008 to 2013. He quickly sums it up with, I don't even know what else was in the file. This kind of seemed like some hogwash stuff. I mean, it's the true facts, but he just wants to close the case because my father dies. That's the way I see it, because he kind of sums this up all really quickly in the sense of, yep, I go see Craig. You know, I study the file, I look at Madeline's disappearance, but he never really, to me, brings anything. He sees some discrepancies in the dates that I didn't notice, that he didn't notice before. And when you look at those discrepancies, it's things like, so the date of the murder is June 8th, 1968. In these reports that Madeline has, that her sister and her family have put together, which only actually her sister, because she had an estranged family, the dates are in June or July 1968. They didn't even report her missing for several months because they would not accept, the LAPD would not accept that a 35-year-old woman was missing. So they wouldn't even take this report. So these are
Right, which is
all,
very common in those
right,
days.
these are exactly, and it's all very hypothetically, the date is not accurate, but
Constructed, right?
June 68 is pretty damn close. So, but he
Absolutely.
just decides that this is enough discrepancy. I mean, it's just, it's absurd to me that if you take 50 years and throw a ball back in there and it lands in the same month, that's a discrepancy. But you know what, if you got to close a file, I guess you have to close a file.
But you ultimately chalked it up to the fact that there wasn't a body.
Well, it's what they said, we need a body or a confession, and that's kind of where I've gone along. This was also in there where my sister Lori, again, that's the same one that lives down there by the dump, she gets a hold of Detective Zapata with a polygraph test that my father takes, and he passes. Of course he passes. These are sociopaths.
Right.
But, you know, for the very thing that he told me he was sorry for, he passed that. I mean, these tests are so ridiculous, but police officers for some reason use them. Courts don't allow them. I don't know, but it is what it is. But there it is. That's
They're
all that's really
inadmissible
in
for a
here.
reason, and a lot of
Exactly.
educated people know that these days. But police use them as tools, and I think put far too much weight to them.
Right. You know, and I appreciate their help. I get it. If they don't have a confession or a body, I get it. And they don't have money to throw at a 50-year-old case when now the murderer's dead. But we still have an accomplice who is very, very, very much alive, sitting in his home, enjoying his life when he helped murder a woman. And that's why I'm here, because that's what's wrong about this. So the
Absolutely.
case is closed.
The case is closed. So, are you must be devastated at this point.
Well, I am pretty devastated.
And so,
It's
how
been
many
years at
months
this
go
point.
by before you decide to drive up to see Donald Holbrook?
Boy, you know, I guess I could look at the recording date. I don't know what year. That was probably another several years, because
Okay.
I have a life that I need to live as
Right.
well. And
So you put
so
it away for that time.
I usually put it away for 4 or 5 years and then drag it back out because of something. I don't know. I always just feel like there's one more thing I can do for this woman who was murdered,
Right.
and for myself, and that, you know, this man needs to pay for what he did.
Sure.
So it's kind of my last effort. Now I'm married, and I bring my husband up with me to go see Craig Holbrook at his house, which was terrifying, by the way, terrifying.
Oh, I can't imagine. Can Before we listen to the audio with Craig, can you give me a little bit of lead in to sort of how you were feeling, how, what the trip up there looked like, and everything leading up to this very momentous occasion?
Well, I had gone to see Craig one time before just to kind of feel him out. Probably, well, this was before Dad was dead. And I just needed to. My counselor told me that because he wasn't just a murderer in that room, he was a pedophile in our house. And
Right.
so they always, if you're really going to get your strength back in life, you're supposed to go and confront them. Craig was 6'5". When I was 4 years old, that was like a giant. When I went to see him this first time, I didn't stay very long at all. When I said, wow, it's about ready to dump rain outside, he almost came out of his chair and I was just frightened. And so I left. I only stayed, this was, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years before I go see him this time. And so now I'm a little bit stronger. My father's gone. I've done some more healing work, just in the sense of finding strength in yourself. And my counselor and I talk about the best plan to go in and kind of bond with him. And so that's what I do. I go back now basically in a character form, not as Jody confronting him, but as I need your help. Will you help me? And so
So
I kind of take on a role, I'd say.
okay. So you're going in with a solid plan, an agenda,
I have an agenda this time.
mission.
Yes. Yet
Okay.
my counselor helps me kind of, and he says that I can't remember now. He the relationship between my dad and Craig is this guy who wants to do everything to please my father. So he says, kind of use that bend. And so I do use the bend of let's do dad's last wish. And I do that because there's some kind of term for it. I don't know. These people who are, you do he just wants to please my father. So
So you
I
played
do.
into that.
I played into it very much.
Okay.
So here is the actual recording. I'm going to start that, and there is some narration that you can follow along in.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? I know, I just saw you, I was like, oh my God. I think I found that lady in that room with us too, but I'm not exactly sure. And of course, Dad's gone. Yeah. And I didn't, it's all over now, because he's gone and done. But I think I found her, but I don't know. Was her name Lynn? Or was it, I don't know. I kind of think that was her. I think it's her, Craig.
Could be.
But,
I don't know. It's amazing the stuff that you forget when you get older. It's just so annoying.
I know, right?
But
help me, because I can't, Dad's gone, and I wish that I would have found this before. Because the last thing he said was, I can't bury her because we're never going to find her. But is that her, Craig? I think it's her.
I don't recognize her. I don't recognize him either.
Well, no, that's her brother.
Oh, I see.
I think it's her.
Could be. That was a long time
It
ago.
was, but was her name Lynn? Or Madeline? So Dad's like, fix it, Jody. I don't know how, Craig. Like he's dying, and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? But I think that's her, and if we could just help fix it, we're never going to bury her. Because what I said to Dad was, I'll bring her up and bury her, right? And Dad said, I know you will. Well, that's not going to fucking happen, because I can't. But I could maybe help her family. But I don't know if this is her. I think she had blonde hair. But as I remember, her hair was down to her shoulders.
Yeah.
It wasn't dark.
Well, that's short and it isn't
No,
blonde.
But the morning that I met her, her hair was down, and I think it was up.
Huh.
I just don't remember. You were there with her. I totally
I don't
remember.
remember that at all. That was a long time
It
ago.
was, but what can I do to help, Craig? I know Dad wanted me to do something. I don't know how to fix it.
I don't know. I have no idea.
I know. It's hard for me too. But it was one of the last things that we talked about. And I want to help.
Yeah, but you don't have to.
Well, I know, but it's what he kind of said for me to do.
Yeah.
In the sense of, it's just been a dilemma since he's left for me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm never going to bury her. So I hired an excavator. Did I tell you that? I did. And so I went up there, but here's the thing, Dad built this road. Well, my sister built a house back here. So after he died, I wanted to make his wishes right. And
Yeah.
so I get this excavator, And we can see the time because Dad's Pepsi and Dad's beer cans. Like, oh, we're getting close to the 60s. But I would have had to take my sister's road out. And so, you know, and she's probably gone like she was little. But I think this is her. I don't know. She didn't have dark hair. Didn't she have blonde hair, Craig?
I don't remember. I don't remember her at all. Period.
I remember her.
No. Don't remember.
That's not her then?
I don't know.
Damn it. I don't know. I just want to help it for her family and then what do I don't know what to do to, and I don't have to help, you're right, except
No.
I want to for Dad.
Well,
Just to bring peace to her family. What should we do to make it right, Craig? You and I didn't do it. Dad did.
Check out of me.
We didn't do it. I remember you crying that day, saying, Stan, why'd you do it? But, you know, so when he was dying, he actually, I was talking to him about this, and I said, Dad, I have felt horrible since that moment. And he said, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And I told him that I would fix it, Craig, and I don't know how. I need your help.
Nah, forget it. Forget it. I don't even recognize who it is.
Well, I don't know who she is. I was too little, but I remember she had blonde hair when she was little. And it's the only picture I could find. I thought it might be her.
I don't know. I wouldn't worry about it myself. I just forget about it.
How do you be peaceful with it? Dad wasn't always peaceful with it.
Well, that's his problem.
And you were fine with it. I wasn't. It was hard for me.
Well, hang in there. Another 30, 40 years, you'll get over it.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I just solved your problem.
Another 30 or so. It took you 30 or 40 years to get over it. So I'm going to leave this here for you.
Why?
You don't want them?
No, take them.
Oh, I just thought you might want them to watch. And there's more in there of you, but I can't get to that other part.
Is there any way to get them to not be fuzzy like that?
Dude, they were taken in 68. Craig.
No, I don't want it if it's that fuzzy, because that strains the heck out of my eyes when I watch stuff like that.
So you won't help me with Dad's last wish?
Nope.
There's nothing we can do? Do you think that's true?
No, I don't know what it would be. I would just forget about it.
It's hard, though. I feel like I'm supposed to make it right.
No.
There's nothing to make right?
No, just let it go. Let it go.
Is that her? Could you just so from my heart, please? Is that her or is it not her?
I have no idea who that is. She doesn't look familiar at all to me.
So it's not her.
I could have been married to her and I wouldn't remember her because my mind is just not working right.
Well,
Another 5 months, I'll be 80 years old, for crying out loud.
I know.
I just can't even remember which way is up.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm just on Dad's last plea about making it right somehow, and I don't know what to do. Maybe if I knew this was her, I could do a memorial or something, because I'm not going to go up there and dig it. I can't. I hired this guy, and we took it all the way down, and we would have had to take that road out, so I'm not going to do that. And it's all over. It's over. Like, Dad's gone.
Just forget the whole dang thing. I think that's your best move.
Is it?
I really do. What do you think?
Probably he wants me to, too. I just want to help, Craig.
No, don't worry about it.
Well, I think the most important thing is if it could be figured out as for her family, more so than anybody else on this side.
Yeah.
I know, but I can't know who she is for sure.
Right.
I just can't. I don't have any idea.
Nope. You'd think I'd remember who she was.
I know, but
Looks
I remember her
familiar.
hair falling down on her shoulders,
She
Craig.
does not look familiar at all to me.
So maybe that's not her.
Could be.
I don't know. I just remember that she was small. She was kind.
What was her name?
I think it was Lynn, wasn't it? Or Madeline. I don't know.
Don't remember.
I don't know. I don't remember her name either, Craig, actually.
Her middle name is Anna.
Right.
Madeline Anna Babcock. No, I don't remember that at all. Nope. Nope. So if I were you, I would just forget the whole thing. I really would. It isn't necessary to you to take your time, energy, intelligence to do anything. You don't really need to.
Well, then how come Dad said, I know you will, Craig?
Oh, who knows?
because he was feeling bad about it. He said, "I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm so sorry."
Nope. Nope. Just let it go.
It's hard.
Yeah.
And you always want to, I just want to do the, what was right by him.
Yeah.
But he was the one that did it.
He'll forgive you. He's probably watching you right now.
No,
Looking down on you. Or looking up. I don't know where he went.
Exactly. He could, right. That's right. That's very true.
One or the other.
Just let it go, huh?
Yeah, I would.
All right. So you don't want these?
Oh, yeah. Leave them. Leave them. Heck yes.
All right.
Leave them right there now.
Because we have more. So if you ever want to help me, Craig, 'cause it's just so hard. I feel like I need to do something.
Nope.
Really?
And there you have it.
Wow.
So what we need is for somebody to have some guidance how to go forward and what to do, or we just let it end here. So if anybody has any suggestions as we move forward or as you watch these things, we'd appreciate it. Do you have any final?
Yeah, if anyone wants the entirety of the audio, we could put that up as a separate piece, because I do think hearing the entire duration of the audio is really profound.
He talks
And
that
so-
way the whole time.
Yeah. So we could put that up, and if there's any interest, just comment below and we can do that.
Yep, that's very true. We're happy to do that.
Mm.
Okay, I'd say thank you very much for watching
Thank you so much.
and helping. Thank you for being here too, Brittany.
You're welcome.